I wasn't supposed to join the track team. Not because I couldn't run. I actually could, faster than most kids at my school. But because I didn't care. Not about school, not about sports, not about much of anything. My name's Josh, and back then I was the kind of kid teachers kept their eye on. The one who always had a smart comment. The one who walked out of class when things got too real. The one whose file in the counselor's office was thicker than the textbook I never opened. I wasn't a bad kid. Just mad. At the world. At my mom. At my dad. Especially my dad, who left when I was 7. He packed up one morning and didn't look back. No note, no goodbye. Just gone. Mom tried. She really did. But working 2 jobs doesn't leave much time for hugs and heart-to-hearts. So I learned to keep everything in. My fists were the only things that ever did the talking. I got into a fight in the cafeteria during the first week of sophomore year. A kid made a joke about my shoes. I shoved him into a table. Stupid, I know. But that's where my head was. Instead of suspension, the vice principal handed me a slip and said, "You're joining track?" I laughed. "I'm not wearing those little shorts." He didn't smile. "You've got 2 choices, Josh. Track or expulsion. You pick." That afternoon, I showed up to practice dragging my feet. Old sneakers. No gear. Everyone else had water bottles, warm-ups, team jackets. I stood there like a ghost. Coach Daniels didn't even look at me at first. Just handed me a stopwatch and said, "Time the 400 meter. Then you're running it next." No speech. No welcome. Just that voice. Low, firm, calm. I didn't know it then, but that voice would become one of the most important in my life. Coach Daniels was different from any adult I'd met. He didn't try to be my friend, didn't lecture me, didn't care about excuses. He just expected me to show up every day. Even when I came late, he'd nod toward the track. Even when I mouthed off, he never raised his voice. And when I finally ran that first 400, gasping for air and nearly collapsing, he just said, "Again tomorrow." At home, things were the same. Mom was always tired, bills stacked up on the counter. Dinner was sometimes microwave noodles, sometimes nothing. But after a few weeks of practice, I started showing up on time. I started drinking water. I even did laundry, just so I didn't smell like a gym sock during sprints. Something was shifting. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some movie moment. It was quiet, slow, steady, discipline. Coach didn't talk about God, but he lived like someone who believed. Every morning he read a small, beat-up devotional before practice. He wore a simple cross around his neck. And when a kid twisted his ankle one day, Coach whispered a prayer while holding his shoulder, like it was the most normal thing in the world. One day, I asked him why he coached. He shrugged. "Someone did it for me, so I do it for you." That was it. No backstory, no trauma dump, just a quiet offering. I didn't say it out loud, but something inside me cracked open. No one had ever said, "for you," before. The season went on. I started placing in local meets. I stopped skipping class. I even helped a younger kid on the team who was struggling with form. Coach watched it all like he always did, hands in his jacket, stopwatch in hand, just nodding slightly when we got it right. But I wasn't running just to win anymore. I was running because for the first time in a long time, someone believed I could. One night, I passed by the school after hours. Lights were off. Track was empty. But Coach's truck was still there. I peeked into the office window and saw him at his desk, going over race stats, notes, names. My name was at the top of one list, circled twice. That night, I lay in bed wondering, why would a man who didn't owe me anything show up for me every day? Why would someone who didn't even know me a year ago care if I made it? The answer didn't come in a flash. It came slowly, like his voice, like his belief. That's when I realized, sometimes God doesn't show up with thunder and fire. Sometimes he sends you a coach. It was late October when I hit the wall. Not a real wall, not brick and concrete, but the kind of wall every runner knows, the one inside your head. We were halfway through the season, and I was getting faster. Coach said I had potential for scholarships if I kept going, but I didn't care about scholarships. I was still angry, at my dad, at myself, at the world, for giving me just enough hope to hurt. One Friday afternoon, we were doing intervals, 400 meters, all out, with 1-minute breaks. Coach had us going round after round, and by the 6th set, my lungs were burning. I slowed, just a little, let my feet drag for a few steps. "Pick it up," Coach called out. I didn't respond, kept running, but not with heart. When I finished the lap, I yanked off my bib and threw it on the grass. "I'm done." Coach didn't flinch, didn't shout. He walked over, calm as ever, and said, "You're tired, that's fine, but don't lie to yourself." I stared at him, confused and sweaty. "You didn't stop because you're tired," he said. "You stopped because something told you you're not enough." That voice has been winning for a long time, hasn't it? My jaw clenched. My hands tightened. "I don't care about this," I snapped. "This race, this team, none of it matters." Coach paused, then crouched down beside me. "Then why are you still here?" That question sat in the air between us. I didn't answer. He stood up and looked out at the track. "I've seen hundreds of kids come and go, but you, Josh, you keep showing up. Even when you're angry. Even when you act like you don't care." He turned to me again. "You're not running from the finish line. You're running from what's chasing you." That line broke something in me. Because he was right. I wasn't chasing medals. I was running from the silence at home. From the nights I wondered why my dad left. From the feeling that no matter how fast I ran, I'd never be good enough for someone to stay. I didn't cry. Not there. Not then. But when I got home that night, I pulled out the note Coach had left in my locker weeks ago. "I believe in you. Always have." I'd read it a dozen times, but for the first time, I believed maybe he meant it. The next morning, I showed up early. Coach was already there, jogging laps by himself. He nodded when he saw me. "Back again?" "Yeah," I said. "Guess I'm not done yet." That day we didn't talk about form or speed. We talked about mindset. Coach told me about a race he lost in college, about how he wanted to quit afterward, how a mentor told him, "Pain is loud, but purpose whispers. Listen close." I didn't say much, but those words stuck with me. Over the next few weeks, something changed in me. Not everything. I still snapped at my teachers sometimes, still rolled my eyes in class. But I started staying late to help clean up the field. I encouraged new runners. I even smiled during practice, once or twice. Coach never praised me out loud, but sometimes, when I finished a tough lap, he'd give a short nod. That nod meant everything. One day after practice, I asked him, "Why do you care so much? About me, I mean. I've been nothing but a headache." Coach wiped sweat from his brow and leaned on the fence. "Because someone once looked at me when I was at my worst and said I was still worth the work." He paused, eyes on the horizon. I believe in grace, Josh, the kind that doesn't wait for you to earn it. I didn't know much about grace, but I started to understand that he wasn't just training my body. He was training my heart. Discipline, focus, accountability. Not for trophies, but for life. At our next meet, I ran the 800-meter with everything I had. I didn't win. Came in second by less than a second. But when I crossed the finish line, Coach was there. He didn't clap, didn't cheer. He just said, "You broke your wall today." And I knew he didn't mean the clock. He meant me. The week after that race, everything was different. People started noticing me at school. Teachers called me disciplined. A few classmates even congratulated me, like I had suddenly become someone worth talking to. It felt weird, good but unfamiliar, like putting on a shirt that almost fits, but not quite. Coach didn't treat me any differently. He still handed me a stopwatch when I walked in, still made me redo drills when I got lazy, still gave me that same quiet nod when I got it right. Then came the scout meet. It was a big one. Local colleges were watching. A chance to get noticed, maybe even earn a scholarship. Coach had mentioned it only once. "You're ready, just run your race." I trained harder than ever, pushed myself in every sprint, cut back on junk food, even studied my competition. I wanted to make him proud. The day of the meet, my mom came to watch. First time she'd made it to one of my races. She was tired, still in her uniform from the diner, but she smiled when she saw me in my gear. "You look like you belong here," she said. I nodded, but inside I was shaking. The starting line felt colder than usual, the crowd louder. Every voice felt like it was aimed at me. When the gun went off, I sprinted too fast, burned through my energy in the first lap. By the time I rounded the final turn, my legs were jelly, my lungs were begging, and then I tripped. My foot caught the edge of a runner's heel. I went down hard, face first on the track. A few runners stumbled behind me. Others jumped over. I scraped my hands, twisted my knee, and all I could hear was the sound of the finish line getting further and further away. I didn't move. I just laid there, breath heaving, the shame heavier than the fall. The race finished without me. Coach was the first one to reach me. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't offer to help me up. He knelt beside me and said, "You gonna stay down, or do you still have one more lap in you?" I wanted to scream, cry, quit, but instead I stood up, limped to the edge of the track, sat down and stared at the ground. "I ruined it," I muttered. "All that training for nothing." Coach sat beside me. "You think this race was your finish line?" I didn't answer. He looked at the track, quiet for a while, then said, "Failure is part of the training, Josh. It's not just about your legs. It's about your heart." He reached into his bag and handed me a towel. "Wipe your face, then listen." I did. And what he said next stayed with me for the rest of my life. "You're gonna fail. Sometimes it'll be your fault. Sometimes it won't. But God doesn't waste anything. Not even the falls. Especially not the falls." He turned to me and smiled gently. "It's what you do after that counts." Later that night, I sat on my bed staring at my scraped palms. They stung. But what hurt more was the silence in my chest. That small voice, the one that always told me I wasn't enough, was whispering again. But this time, there was another voice. Coach's voice. God doesn't waste anything. I didn't fully understand it yet, but it planted something. A seed. Maybe there was a purpose to the pain. Maybe falling didn't mean it was over. Maybe this was just part of the race. The next week, I asked Coach if I could start from the bottom again. No sprints, just laps. Basics. He nodded. No fanfare, no speeches. Just a small smile and the stopwatch in his hand. He knew. He knew I hadn't quit. He knew the race wasn't over. And most of all, he knew the most important lesson I was just starting to learn. Strength doesn't come from winning. It comes from standing back up when everything in you says stay down. It was a rainy Thursday when I finally broke. Not on the track, not during a race, but at a desk in a quiet classroom during study hall. I was staring at an assignment I didn't understand, my scraped knee still healing, my pride still bruised from the scout meet. And then a message popped up on my phone. It was from my mom. "Your father called today." I stared at the screen, not breathing. I hadn't heard that name in almost 10 years. She didn't say anything else. No details, no explanation. Just that. Just, he called. The walls closed in. I packed up my bag and walked out of school. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't ask for permission. I just walked and walked. And somehow, my feet took me to the track. Coach was there, like always, fixing hurdles in the rain, hood up, jacket soaked, clipboard in hand. He looked up as I approached. "Didn't think I'd see you till practice." I didn't respond, just stood there, shivering, from the cold, from the storm inside me. He put down the clipboard, walked over, didn't ask questions, just handed me his jacket. I sank onto the bleachers, jacket over my shoulders. Coach sat beside me, silent. After a long minute, I said it. "My dad called today." He didn't react, didn't prod, just nodded slightly. I kept going. "I don't even know what he wants. He left, you know? Just vanished. Now he wants to talk?" My voice cracked. "He doesn't deserve that." Coach looked at the rain for a long time. Then he said, "You're right. Maybe he doesn't. But maybe you do." I didn't understand. "You deserve to heal, Josh. Sometimes that means letting someone back in. Sometimes it means forgiving someone who's not sorry." He paused. "Not for them. For you." I stared at him. "How do you know so much about this?" Coach pulled something from his bag, an old envelope weathered at the edges. He handed it to me. "It's a letter I wrote to my own father. A long time ago, I never sent it." I opened it slowly, careful not to tear the paper. The handwriting was neat but firm. It read, "You missed every game, every birthday, every moment I needed you to say you were proud. But I'm not writing this to blame you. I'm writing this because I want peace. Not silence, not bitterness, just peace. Even if I never hear from you, I forgive you." I looked up and for the first time, Coach's eyes weren't steady. They were tired, human. "You wrote this to a man who never answered?" He nodded. "It wasn't for him. It was for the boy inside me who needed to let go." We sat there in the rain for what felt like hours. No whistle, no stopwatch. Just the sound of water hitting the track and two broken stories finding each other. I went home that night and sat at my desk. The same one I'd ignored for years. I didn't write my dad. Not yet. But I pulled out a piece of paper and started. "Dear Coach," I wrote about everything. The fights, the loneliness, the anger. How I hated the world for years, and how somehow, through all that noise, his quiet belief had been the only thing steady. I left it on his desk the next morning before practice. Didn't wait for him to read it. Didn't ask him to say anything. Just ran my laps. That afternoon, after everyone else had left, he handed me a folded piece of paper. No envelope, just one line, handwritten, "Still proud of you, always will be." I didn't cry, but I smiled all the way home. The next morning, Mom left a note on the kitchen table. "Your dad wants to meet for coffee. Sunday, 10 a.m. I said it was up to you." I stared at the paper like it was a loaded question, because it was. For years, I imagined what I'd say if I ever saw him again. All the anger, all the hurt, I'd let it fly. Tell him how he broke us. Tell him how much I needed him. But now that the moment was real, I didn't know if I could face him at all. That Friday, I barely spoke at practice. I jogged when I was supposed to sprint, messed up drills, avoided eye contact. Coach didn't say much, but after practice, he called me over. "You're carrying something heavy." I nodded. "My dad wants to meet. Sunday." Coach looked at me for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" That stopped me. No one had asked me that. Everyone always told me what I should do, what a good son would do, what a mature person would do, but Coach, he waited. "I don't know," I admitted. "I want to scream at him, or walk away, or maybe both." Coach sat down on the bleachers. "You know, Josh, forgiveness isn't permission. It's not saying what happened was okay. It's choosing not to let what happened keep writing your story." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You don't owe your father anything, but maybe you owe yourself a chance to be free." That night, I tossed in bed for hours. Every version of the meeting played in my head. He apologizes. He doesn't. He blames my mom. He pretends like nothing happened. And in every version, I walked away feeling nothing. Still broken. Still angry. Saturday morning, I told Coach I wasn't going. He nodded. Didn't push. But before I left, he handed me a folded card. "If you don't go, fine. But read this Sunday morning anyway." Sunday came. I sat by my window at 9:57 a.m., watching the clouds drift across a quiet sky. I didn't go to the coffee shop. I opened the card. It was blank inside, except for one line in Coach's handwriting. "The strongest men don't avoid the hard things. They face them with grace." I sat with that for a while. Then, without really deciding, I grabbed my hoodie and walked out the door. The coffee shop was almost empty. He was already there, older than I remembered, more tired around the eyes. When he saw me, he stood up quickly, like he didn't expect I'd come. "Josh," he said. His voice cracked. I nodded, sat down across from him. No handshake. No hug. Just silence. He talked first, about his mistakes, his regrets, how he was scared and stupid, and how he didn't know how to come back. I listened, didn't interrupt, didn't cry, didn't say much at all. When he finished, he looked at me like he was waiting for permission, for redemption. But I couldn't give him that, not right away. "I don't know what you want from me," I said. "I'm not here to fix anything. I'm not here to pretend like it didn't matter." He nodded. "I understand." I paused, looked down at my hands. "I'm here because I don't want to carry this anymore. The hate, the questions, the weight." He blinked slowly. "I don't forgive you yet," I said, "but I might, someday." That was it. We sat for another few minutes. Then I stood up. As I left, he said, "I'm proud of who you've become." And for the first time, I didn't need to hear that from him, because I already had, from the man who showed up when he didn't. That evening, I went back to the track. Coach was there, as always, didn't ask how it went, just nodded and handed me a baton. "Let's work on your handoff." And that's when I realized, life isn't always about winning races. Sometimes it's about learning how to pass what you've learned to the next runner, with grace, with strength, with purpose. It started with a freshman named Matteo. He was small for a runner, nervous, always checking his shoelaces 3 times before every practice. Coach paired us for warm-ups one day. No explanation, just said, "Josh, run with him." Matteo barely spoke during the first few laps, but on the third he asked, "Were you always this fast?" I almost laughed. "Not even close," I said. "I used to fake leg cramps just to skip warm-ups." He looked at me wide-eyed. "You?" "Yeah," I said. "Everyone starts somewhere." After that, he stuck by my side, asked questions, watched my drills, tried to match my pace even when he was out of breath. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then Coach pulled me aside. "You're a mirror now, Josh. What you show him, that's what he'll reflect." That stuck with me, because I remembered being that kid, looking for anyone who made me believe I had it in me. And now, someone was looking at me like that. One day, Matteo came in late, eyes puffy, shoulders low. Coach sent him to jog laps, but he stopped after 2 and sat down on the grass. I walked over, sat beside him. "Rough day?" He nodded. "My dad didn't come home last night," he muttered. "No one knows where he is. Again." My chest tightened. I wanted to say something wise, something Coach would say, but instead, I just said, "I've been there." He looked at me. "I used to think it was my fault," I added. "That maybe if I was better, faster, smarter, quieter, he would have stayed." Matteo didn't speak, but a tear rolled down his cheek. I handed him a tissue from my bag. "Hey," I said, "you showed up today. That's something." That was the first time I realized the impact Coach had made on me was now flowing through me. Not because I was trying to be a leader, but because I was simply becoming who I needed when I was younger. The next meet, I stood behind Matteo at the starting line. He looked terrified. I leaned in and whispered, "Pain is loud, but purpose whispers. Listen close." He nodded, exhaled, and ran the best time of his life. Afterward, Coach walked up to me. "You've been paying attention," he said. I shrugged. "You taught me." "No," he said. "I just lit the fire. You're the one keeping it burning." It was quiet praise, but it meant everything. That spring, Coach asked me to speak at the banquet. I didn't want to. Public speaking wasn't my thing, but he said, "Say what you needed to hear when you joined." So I wrote a few lines, and when I got on stage, I looked out at the crowd. My mom, Coach, my teammates, even Matteo. And I said this: when I joined this team, I was angry. Not just angry, lost. I didn't care about races or trophies. I just wanted something to hold on to, someone who wouldn't leave. Coach gave me that. Not with speeches or hugs, but with consistency, with belief, with grace. I paused, took a breath. I think sometimes we wait for heroes to show up wearing capes, but real heroes show up every day, with a stopwatch, or a kind word, or a second chance. And if you're lucky, Like me, you get to become one of them. The room was silent. Then came the clapping, the kind that starts small and grows until it fills the space. Coach was the only one not clapping. He just stood in the back, smiling. After the banquet, I stayed to help clean up. Coach handed me the broom like always, but this time he said, "You ready for college?" I nodded. "Scared?" "Yeah." He chuckled. "Good. That means it matters." Then he handed me a small box. Inside was the old letter he'd shown me months ago, and a new note. "Give this to someone else when they need it more than you." Legacy isn't just about what you build. It's what you leave behind in others. Coach built something in me, and now I was ready to carry it forward. It had been 6 years. 6 years since I'd last stood on that track. Since I'd heard Coach's whistle or felt my heart pound before a race. A lot had changed. I'd graduated college, started coaching part-time at a local youth center, even led a few retreats for young athletes struggling with anger and self-worth, like I once did. But one thing hadn't changed. Coach. I pulled into the lot next to the old gym. The paint on the doors was chipped now, and the bleachers had rusted corners. But as I stepped onto the field, I saw him. Clipboard in hand, stopwatch swinging, same focused eyes. He was older, a bit slower, but still him. I called out, "Need help with laps?" He looked up and grinned. "Only if you can still keep up." We walked the track side by side. Didn't speak for a while. Didn't need to. Sometimes the silence between two people holds more than words ever could. Finally, I said, "I started coaching." Coach nodded. "Figured you would." I smiled. "You knew before I did." He shrugged. "I just paid attention. That's half the job." We sat on the bleachers. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows on the track. I told him about Mateo, how the kid had become team captain his senior year, how he wrote a poem about his dad for the school assembly, how he started mentoring middle schoolers last fall. Coach listened, arms crossed, the faintest smile on his lips. "You passed it on," he said. "Trying to," I replied. "I kept the letter." He looked at me, eyes soft, and I pulled it from my jacket pocket. "I made a copy, gave it to a kid last year, told him what you told me, that God doesn't waste anything." Coach stared at the horizon. After a long pause, he said, "You know, there were days I thought about quitting. Thought maybe all this didn't matter. But then a kid would stay after practice, ask for help, try again after failing. And I'd remember, faith isn't loud, it's steady." He looked at me. "You were one of those reminders." We sat for a while, watching the sun dip behind the trees. Finally, Coach said, "I'm retiring at the end of this season." My chest tightened. "You serious?" He nodded. "It's time." My knees agree. I didn't know what to say. The thought of this place without him felt wrong, empty. But he smiled and added, "Time for someone else to hold the whistle." He stood up and reached into his bag, pulled out his old stopwatch, held it out to me. I froze. "You're giving me this?" He nodded. "It's not about time. It's about timing. And I think it's yours now." I took it with both hands, felt the weight of it. Not just metal and glass, but every lesson, every lap, every word I'd once needed. Coach clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't try to be me. Just be there. That's what kids need." I left that day feeling something I hadn't felt since my first race. Nervous, excited, honored. Not because of a title, but because I finally understood what legacy meant. Years passed. Coach and I stayed in touch, sometimes over coffee, sometimes just a text. Proud of you. I kept coaching, not perfectly, but honestly. And every now and then, a kid would stay behind after practice, looking lost, looking for something. And I'd sit next to them, silent for a moment, then offer the same thing that saved me years ago. Presence, belief, grace. And sometimes, just sometimes, I'd hand them a folded piece of paper, a copy of that letter. Because like Coach once said, God doesn't waste anything, especially not the broken parts.